Hi, I'm Nico, and I'm going to show you how you can add bleed to your print files. In a previous video, I shared what exactly print bleed is and why it is important when you are having your files printed. So first things first is if you are a tabletop game developer or a designer and you have the layered files of your game, then you should generate the bleed yourself using your layered files. So just add the bleed area and continue your designs all the way to the edge. If you haven't had your files commissioned yet by a graphic designer or a graphic artist, then this should be part of your conversation with them and that they should add these files. Most graphic artists and designers would know about this requirement, but I have encountered some situations wherein the artist does not because mostly maybe because they work with web-based graphics more than print-based graphics. So make sure you talk to your graphic designer and artist and your printer also so that you can get the correct dimensions of the bleed area and you can relay this to your graphic designer and artist in order for them to create it. So this video is actually more for those who like to print and place and who've downloaded files from a website because most print and place don't have bleed because they are in the 3 by 3 grid made for home-based printing. And those files usually don't have bleed because it's assumed that you're going to cut it by hand and so that you can fit more cards into a single sheet, and also so that you'll have to do less cuts because adding bleed means that you're going to have to do more cuts between card files. But let's say you want to have it commercially printed for a better version, then you're going to need to add bleed to those files. So in order to do this, you're going to need image processing software. I use Affinity Photo. I used to use Photoshop, but I made the switch. And you can use GIMP also. I think that GIMP should be able to do the complicated image processing that I will share later on. I haven't done it yet, but maybe I'll explore it in a different video. So the first thing you have to do is to look first at your file because depending on how the card is designed, the way of adding bleed is easier or harder. And the easiest ones to add bleed to are the designs which have a border. Okay, so most of the time when I cut cards, I use the dimension of the Euro Poker, which is 63 millimeters by 88 millimeters. So that means that the bleed, so when you add bleed, the standard is usually 3 millimeters on all sides, which means that you will increase the dimensions of your file by 6 millimeters horizontally and vertically because it's 3 millimeters for each side. So let me just fix my canvas. So I'm going to now adjust the size of my canvas. From 63, it's now going to be 69 millimeters. And from 88, it's going to be now 94 millimeters. Then make sure to anchor it in the middle. So there, so that's our file now with the bleed area. And I'm now going to, well, I have to rasterize this file first and select the bleed area. So there you go. Because this card file is rounded, I will have to also select these areas around here. So I'm going to just select these rounded areas. Okay, now before we fill this, we're going to have to grow the selection. So I'm going to just grow it by around 1 to 3 millimeters. 1 to 3 pixels. So here we go. I'm going to grow it now by 2 pixels. And the reason for this is because there are usually these aliasing artifacts. I think that's what you call them. And you can see this, the outermost pixel of the design has a different transparency. So there. Okay, now that we've selected this, we're just going to use the fill. Here, I'm going to fill it with the, so I already color picked earlier the color of the border. So there, we're going to fill it. And there you go. So this file now has bleed. Next, we're going to add bleed to this kind of design wherein there is a border but it's not a flat color. It has a texture to it. So you can't just fill it because of the texture. So first things first is we're going to add the bleed area again. So 69 millimeters by 88 millimeter, 94 millimeter. Okay, there. And then we're going to again select the bleed area and grow it by around 2 to 3 pixels. Okay, now I'm going to use the in-painting tool, which is in Adobe, in Affinity Photo, it's called in-painting. In Photoshop, it's called content-aware fill. So I'm going to again use fill, but I'm going to set it to in-painting. So what in-painting does is it's going to take the design of the card and it's going to guess what it's going to make a guess on what the designs of the selected area are when filled up with in-painting. So as you can see here, there it made a guess and the guess is pretty good. You can see the design looks like the rest of the texture of the card. So it's not exactly perfect though, and let me show you why. So this is a card from our game, Darna at ang Nawawalang Bato, and you can see it has bleed. Now, this is the card without the bleed, and I'm gonna again use in painting just to demonstrate the difference. So here we go, and we're gonna in paint that. Okay, so you can see, let me just zoom in here. This is the design with the in-painting bleed, the guess bleed, and this is the original file. So there, you can see it's not exactly perfect in its guesses. But since the bleed, most of it is going to be cut out anyway, because what we really don't want, the reason why we're adding bleed is so we don't have that white sliver of paper. Most of this will not be really that noticeable once it is cut. But you can actually see that the algorithm made some mistakes. Like here, it copied the copyright text on the bottom, and up here, it copied a bit of the title of Narda into the bleed. But that's okay because most of that is going to be cut off anyways. Now, the most complicated file that you can get is something like this, wherein it's not really clear where the border is, and you have a lot of these UI elements that are very close to the edge of the border. So when you use in-painting or content-aware fill, the algorithm is going to make a lot of mistakes because it's very close. So let me just show you what is going to happen. So here I'm going to again add the bleed area. 69 by 94. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to again select the area around this and again show you why we need to grow it by around 2 pixels. Okay, and then I'm going to use content aware fill. So there we go. So you can see that the algorithm made a lot of mistakes. It's not a lot of the elements of the design and the UI elements actually made it to the bleed. I'm just going to duplicate this so that for later, oops, I'm going to duplicate the layer. Okay, so how do we deal with this now? So it depends on you how much you want to clean up the bleed. Because again, most of it is going to be cut out. But some of these things like let's say this one at the edge might be visible in the final card after cutting because it's very close. Let me just create the bleed guides to show that. So here, oops, 81, and this is 66. Okay. So there you can see it's very close. So even if the cutting drifts a bit, then you're going to see these problems. Right, so I'm going to show you some tools that you can use in order to clean this up. So the first is to use the in-painting brush. So the in-painting brush is just like in-painting but in brush form. I'm not sure if Photoshop has something like this, but if it doesn't, then just use selections and then select the area you want to inpaint and then use the content aware fill again. So I'm just going to use the inpainting brush. Oops, select my layer and I'm just going to clean that up. So here you can see, oops. So the inpainting brush isn't always correct. As you saw when the 2020 was copied again, just use it again until you're satisfied. So like that. Whoops, there, made some mistakes. Just use it again here. So these designs here, the edge, it's up to you if you want to clean that up, because sometimes it will look like it was actually part of the design, but that's up to you. So let me just show you how it is. So let's say I want to clean that up. So there, I'm just using the inpainting brush. And here as well, just clean that up. Oops. Okay. So if you can also use the inpainting brush here, you can see this fire design was kind of copied into the bleed. So let's clean that up. Okay. So these edge designs, you actually don't really need to clean that up, because if you're going to quarter around it, then there's a higher chance that it's going to be cut out. So here, some UI elements that you kind of want to clean out. So just use the inpainting brush over this. Oops, I missed a spot. Okay, so now you have these diagonal lines. Now these diagonal lines, most probably your inpainting is not going to be able to do it properly. Let me just show you. Okay, so there, because it's still making guesses, and in my experience, the algorithm is not very good at guessing these kinds of things. So what you can use is the clone tool, the clone brush tool. I don't know what it's called in Photoshop. I think it's maybe stamp, or I don't know. But what it does is it copies parts from the design and paints it onto another place. So I selected the clone brush tool. First, I'm going to select where we're going to sample it. So here, I'm going to set this tiny cross over there. That means that that's where it's going to sample when I paint. So now I'm going to just, from there, I'm going to paint here and just continue that there. And voila, there you go. So let me just do that here. Because of the beta here, it's a little hard to get a good sample. So I'm going to have to make my brush smaller so that I don't get that beta part. Okay. But still works. Okay, there you go. Then you can also clean that up here with the clone brush tool. Oops. So it's up to you too if you wanna, if you wanna clean this part here. Use the clone brush tool again to sort of clone this area here. Okay, then I can just use some inpainting to clean up these parts that I didn't want to accidentally copy over. So there, anything I missed? Here we go. So this is the last one. So stamp tool again, clone brush tool again, and then just copy. Okay, so this is the cleaned up bleed. Okay, and let's just compare that to the original one created by the inpainting. So there, see, it's a lot cleaner. It's a lot more what you'd imagine the original bleed would have looked like. There you go. But it's really up to you how much you wanna clean this up, because again, most of it is going to be cut out anyways. So what you really have to be careful with is just the ones that are near the cutting lines over here. So I hope that was able to help you into adding bleed to files whenever you need to. And hopefully maybe you also learned some image processing techniques through this video. Now I do want to comment that most games have dozens and dozens of unique designs. And so going into each file and adding bleed to them individually is very time consuming. So what I do is I usually program it using macros in Affinity Photo, and then I use batch processing. In Photoshop, it's called actions. And then again, you can use batch processing in order to do repetitive tasks again and again. And I will probably try to do that in a future video. So if you liked what you saw and you want to see more of these kinds of contents, please like and subscribe to my channel and my videos. Thank you.